So the writers at ESPN recently just gave us a whole bunch of rumors to dive into. Let's go talk about it. All right, let's talk about the first section of this article. What is the word on top free agent hitters Kyle Tucker and Kyle Schwarber? Jeff Passan starts off by saying Tucker falls into that interesting bucket where he'll rightly demand a contract in excess of $300 million, but the number of teams willing to pay him that will limit his options. The Dodgers and Giants make sense, as do the Phillies. Schwarber, on the other hand, will have a bountiful market. Now, I think that's interesting because I could see teams like the Dodgers, Giants, and the Phillies, but I could also definitely see the Yankees getting the mix. Now, I don't think the Red Sox are going to sign him, but I could definitely see them making a phone call, putting a report out there of some kind to just drive up the price because that's what division rivals do. And hey, why not the Blue Jays doing something like that too? I mean, shoot, look at the Dodgers and the Giants themselves. I could see them going back and forth when it comes to the bidding. And if the Phillies get serious for him, then why couldn't we see a report that the Mets are interested? Again, that's what teams do in division to try to drive up the price. And watch, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see the Braves are interested. Now, all in all, I do think he ends up getting over $400 million. Now, Jesse Rogers says the Cubs will probably move on from Tucker, which doesn't surprise me because I think they need to focus on pitching, and they already have a younger option there like Owen Casey who could just take over. And he also mentions the Rays having been mentioned before, but probably won't be serious. Now, I think that would be fun if the Rays actually did get into the mix, and they have new ownership there taking over, so maybe there's the possibility that they would like to spend some money, invest in a player like Kyle Tucker, who is a Tampa native. But like we saw with the Orioles last offseason, new ownership doesn't necessarily mean a team is just going to start spending money. Now, as for Schwarber, this part's interesting. He says Schwarber could help fill out the Yankees lineup in case Cody Bellinger leaves. Now, I don't see that at all unless Stanton moves out to the outfield full time or both him and Schwarber split time between the outfield and DH. But with Stanton's injury history, I don't see him playing a lot of outfield. So I think Jesse Rogers was more just speculating here. On to the next section. What do those in the industry think the Detroit Tigers will do with Tarek Skubal this winter? Buster Olney says that other teams believe they'll seriously consider moving him if they can get what they want in a trade. And I do think that's true because he is going to be going into free agency next offseason, especially when Scott Boras is his agent. And with Tarek Skubal, you got to think, I mean, he's going to be a 6 to 7 wins above replacement pitcher next year while also making under $20 million in arbitration. So with that combo, you're absolutely going to be able to get a good haul for him. And I definitely think you could even get more than what the Yankees had to give up for Juan Soto at the time. Now, here's the juicy part. He said the Mariners are expected to be in the mix, and I fully agree with that. I mentioned them as a possibility in my Tarek Skubal video a little while ago. You can see that video up here somewhere. Now, people out there are going to say, well, the Mariners already have a very good rotation. Why would they want Tarek Skubal? Listen, at the end of the day, the Blue Jays edged them out in the ALCS, even with that very good rotation. And if they want to try and get over the hump, maybe they got to be a bit more aggressive here. Another thing, too, is the Mariners have a ton of prospects. And shoot, they have a major league ready arm that they could possibly deal that's under control with Bryce Miller, who has good potential, but he was up and down this year. Bryce Miller can go to the Tigers rotation right now, throw some good prospects in with him, and that could be a nice package for the Tigers. And with the Mariners having Skubal in the fold, they would be in great shape for 2026. And they probably wouldn't feel it much moving forward anyway, especially after they drafted Cade Anderson 3rd overall this past year. He also mentions the Mets here, and I agree, they should be in the mix, especially with that payroll, Juan Soto leading the way, and the utter disappointment they had this past year, missing the postseason. And they need someone at the top of the rotation there. They got some pretty good arms, but you need someone leading the way every 5th day, and they could absolutely put a package together with one of their young arms. You got Nolan McLean, Jonah Tong, Brandon Sproat. One of those guys could go with someone like Jet Williams, who is a little blocked there, especially with the emergence of Carson Benj this past year. So the Mets, they could definitely put a package together if they wanted to. But knowing David Stearns, though, who has a small market background, I wonder if he would rather go after someone that has a bit more club control, say Joe Ryan, maybe even Mackenzie Gore, if he's available and the Nationals are okay dealing him with in division. Now, if the Mets would rather go after names like those, that could absolutely open the door for a team like the Mariners. And also, don't sleep on Jerry DiPoto's ability to pull off a big trade. He's done plenty of them in the past. Now, as for Jesse Rogers, he says there's mixed feelings and teams out there think they'll just hang on to him and go for it again next year. Now, in that case, when he gets to free agency, the Tigers can just offer him the qualifying offer, and if he does go elsewhere, they'll get a draft pick. But to me, if they go that route, they have to spend this offseason. They can't hold back. They were in for Alex Bregman last offseason, and they didn't go the extra mile to get a deal done. In my opinion, this offseason, they got to throw down the money to get someone like Bo Bichette, especially after missing on Bregman last offseason. They need another bat in that lineup. They struggled a lot in the second half and in the postseason as well. And if you keep Skubal, make your team better and really go for it, because at that point, what's the point of even keeping him? Now, as for the mixed feelings part, sure, I could see them just hanging on to him, but I think it'll come down to how far a team is willing to go. And to me, if there is one team that is willing to go that extra mile, I could see the Mariners doing it. On to the next section. What should we expect from the Dodgers and Blue Jays this winter after reaching the World Series? Now, Jorge Castillo talks about Bo Bichette and said the Blue Jays have the money to get a deal done. And of course they do. Now, I do want to touch on this because in my free agent predictions video, where all my predictions are going to be wrong, by the way, I went with the Tigers getting Bo Bichette. Now, sure, that might be a bit of a bold take because we actually have to see the Tigers spend some money, and the Blue Jays have shown us that they are willing to spend the money. They got a lot of it there, by the way, in Toronto with the Rogers Corporation there. So where I pause on the Blue Jays, though, isn't if they have the money, but will they be willing to give Bo Bichette shortstop money that he's going to be seeking? Now, when you look at the metrics defensively, they're not great, and he's probably more of a second baseman moving forward, but with Bo Bichette and his agent, he's a shortstop. They're going to be looking for shortstop money because shortstops have higher value, so of course they're going to be looking for a bigger payday. Now, again, it's not if the Blue Jays have the money, but are they willing to put the money down for Bo Bichette to keep him in the fold for the long haul, especially when they just signed Vlad long term, and they do need to invest in some pitching. Kevin Gausman's going to be a free agent next offseason. You got a couple of guys hitting free agency this offseason with Chris Bassett, Max Scherzer. Sure, Shane Bieber just exercised his player option, but they need to add some pitching for the long haul. Will the Blue Jays be willing to go the extra mile for Bo Bichette, especially when there's other teams out there that would love to have a bat like his and might be willing to get aggressive for him and pay him that shortstop money? Now, for the Dodgers, Alden Gonzalez does mention a couple of things that stuck out to me, with the first being they clearly need a closer. I mean, hey, they pulled off a World Series with a questionable bullpen, but I do think they're going to have to add someone for the back end there. They brought in Tanner Scott last offseason, hoping he was going to be the guy, but he had a pretty tough year, not great numbers overall. And with Tanner Scott, he's been more of a setup guy anyway in his career. You know, sure, he has served as a closer from time to time, but he has been very good as a setup guy. Could you imagine the Dodgers getting a closer, say Edwin Diaz, who has an opt-out, and I do think he is going to opt out. You got Robert Suarez, who just opted out, Devin Williams, Ryan Helsley. I mean, my goodness, could you imagine if Tanner Scott gets himself back on track? You add a top closer like one of those guys. I mean, that would be absolutely disgusting. I mean, could you also imagine, too, Edwin Diaz or Robert Suarez? I mean, that would make life even more miserable for the Mets and the Padres. I mean, the fact that the Mets, they're already trying to play catch up anyway, and the Padres, they're always trying to catch the Dodgers in the division there. So could you imagine one of those teams losing their closer to the Dodgers? I mean, that's just diabolical. Now, he also mentions here that the Dodgers are going to be more on the periphery for Kyle Tucker. I think that's interesting. Now, to me, I think they are the perfect fit for him. They have an opening in the outfield. They're clearly in win now mode. I mean, at this point, they're in dynasty mode, for crying out loud, and they have the money, of course. Now, they have spent big over the last few years, so I do wonder if there is a possibility where maybe they feel like they've done most of the heavy lifting up to this point. So would they want to invest in a big contract like Kyle Tucker, especially with all the big contracts they have? I mean, listen, it's the Dodgers. They got a ton of money over there. And with Ohtani, they don't have to pay that guy and for like, another 8-9 years because the money's all deferred anyway. So, I could absolutely see the Dodgers being willing to pay him the money. But I find this part interesting that they're going to be more on the periphery. Now, when it comes to other teams, if the Dodgers are going to be kind of more on the outside looking in, well, that's really going to open the door for teams like the Yankees, the Phillies, or heck, even the Giants. So we all know that AI is all the rage these days, but the way that I like to use AI is anything that can keep my potato of a brain organized, especially when trying to research for my videos, answering emails, doing this, doing that, whatever else comes up. Now, not too long ago, I stumbled upon an internet browser called Comet by Perplexity, which at one point cost a couple of $1,000 for crying out loud, but right now they've hooked us up with a link down below in the description that makes it completely free, so go check it out for yourself. Now, Comet's powered by an AI agent that you'll notice when the blue halo lights up. That's when you know that it's working for you. Comet can summarize research, organize notes, handle the little tasks that come up throughout the day that normally slow you down, and it can even order food for you. Now, it's ad-free, distraction-free, and everything happens inside one window. You can search, organize, and work all in the same place. Now, for me, it's been great, especially during busy days when I got a lot of research to do for a video, a lot of editing to do on the side, or whatever else random that comes up throughout the day. So if you've been looking for a more organized and a more capable browser, I absolutely recommend checking out Comet. Again, you can download Comet for free with the link down below in the description, and you get 30 days of Perplexity Pro included. On to the next section. After a disappointing end of the season for both New York teams, how active do those in the industry expect the Yankees and Mets to be this winter? Now, basically in this section, Jorge Castillo and Buster Olney say they expect the Yankees and the Mets to be aggressive this offseason, especially with how active they were at the trade deadline, and I agree. I mean, they're always active anyway, but with the Mets not only needing to get back on track after the disappointing season they had, along with trying to catch the Dodgers, I mean, I think you could see them being out there a lot, but I could also see David Stearns really looking to get creative as well. I could see him moving on from Pete Alonso to free up some cash, bring in a younger bat with power upside like Munetaka Murakami, or someone with more versatility and pop like Kazuma Okamoto from Japan, maybe even someone like Ryan O'Hearn, while also bolstering the pitching staff. Now for the Yankees, I think they have to be aggressive because they have a lot of free agents and holes to fill. Now personally, I do think Bellinger is a great fit, so I could see him just going back, but could Cashman feel like they need to do more there and go after Kyle Tucker, especially after not being able to retain Juan Soto last year? Either way, they need to add to the bullpen, which was up and down this year, and they could use an upgrade in the leadoff spot as well. On to the next section. What other team are you hearing could dominate the headlines this winter? Now, Alden Gonzalez says the Mariners, and I agree. I could definitely see them being more aggressive than we've seen in the past because they were 8 outs away from a World Series, for crying out loud. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I could see them being in the picture for Tarek Skubal, but I could also see them looking for other trades as well with all the top prospects they have. Maybe even for another outfield bat, but regardless, they have to figure out a way to keep Josh Naylor, maybe Eugenio Suarez in the fold. Now, do I see them bringing back both? Based off their spending history in the past, I probably don't see them doing both, but Naylor hit very well for them after the trade deadline and in the postseason as well. Sure, Suarez did come up with a big grand slam there in the postseason, but Naylor was way more consistent with the bat after the trade, so I could see them looking to keep him around, and he's younger as well, so I think he's a good fit with Seattle, but I definitely think they're going to look to make other moves, and like I said earlier, Jerry DiPoto, never count that man out for getting a trade done. Now, as for Jesse Rogers, he says the Phillies, and I think they're going to be more aggressive too. Dave Dombrowski, he's always making moves left and right every single offseason, so I always expect him to be active, but this offseason feels different for the Phillies. They need to do something different to try and get over the hump. What they've been doing here for the last couple of years just hasn't been enough. I think they need to make an improvement in the outfield over Nick Castellanos. I could see them looking to move on from him. Maybe an improvement over Alec Boehm. Could they trade him somewhere to a team that maybe needs a bat? But I think they need to improve in little areas. They got the stars there, but I think they could be better defensively, both in the outfield, at third base as well. And they even got someone like Aiden Miller coming up the pipe. You know, you got Justin Crawford as well. I expect him to be in the mix a good amount for next year, but they need to go out there and make some other moves. And I expect Dave Dombrowski is going to be looking everywhere he can to make the team better. On to the last section. Who are the biggest names you're hearing that could be traded this offseason? Now, Buster Olney, he brings up the possible labor situation and says guys like Joe Ryan, Mackenzie Gore, Stephen Kwan, Adley Rutschman, and Lars Nootbaar could be moved before that time comes. Now, I do think Joe Ryan is going to get moved since the Twins made a bunch of moves at the deadline. They just didn't have enough time to move Joe Ryan. He was popping up in trade rumors around that time, so I think they're going to move on from him this offseason. I could definitely see teams like the Red Sox, the Mets, the Orioles, Orioles, Cubs, maybe even the Giants, because they all need starting pitching and they have the prospects, I think, to get a deal done. I think even Pablo Lopez could be up for conversation as well. Yeah, he's on a contract, but it is pretty team friendly. Now, he also mentioned Mackenzie Gore here, and I could see him being on the table as well for those teams that I mentioned, depending on which way the Nationals want to go, since they just brought in Paul Taboni, and I could see Quan being available at the right price, since the Guardians are always looking to get ahead on value. Now, for Adley, I don't know, maybe, but the Orioles, they would be selling low on him, and they're still valuing keeping him around. He could split time with Sam Basayo at catcher and first base. I think they would like for him to stick around. I mean, this guy was being viewed as one of the top players in the game not too long ago. I think they would like for him to get back on track, have a bounce back season, and try to help them get back to the postseason for next year. Now, he also mentioned Lars Nootbaar. I mean, that's interesting because he just got surgery not too long ago. Brendan Donovan as well. He had a hernia surgery. So I could see both those guys being on the table. I wonder what other teams would think, especially with Nootbaar. There are reports out there he could miss opening day, so I think that could come up. Brendan Donovan, he got the hernia surgery. That's not too much of a recovery time, so I think teams out there would definitely be interested in him. He's a high contact bat. He can play multiple positions, so I could see him being on the table as well. Also, look out for Alec Burleson, decent power bat from the left side. I could see teams being interested in him too. Now, Passan wraps this up by saying that the industry expects the Tigers to hang on to Skubal. Now, again, if they do that, they better go out there and make some moves. They better be aggressive this offseason. If you're going to risk losing Tarek Skubal, you better go out there and put all your chips on the table, go make some big moves. But you could also look at it from the point of view too, even if Skubal ends up leaving, go out there and go get some guys that can help you still compete even without Skubal over the next several years. Like I said, Bo Bichette, that would be a very nice bat for the Tigers to have over the next several years. So will they be aggressive? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But he does mention some other names here as well. He brings up Pablo Lopez, Mackenzie Gore, who I just mentioned as well, but also Sonny Gray, Jarren Duran, Wilyer Abreu, and Nolan Arenado. Now, Sonny Gray, I definitely could see happening. I mean, he was popping up in trade rumors last offseason, and with the Cardinals going through a bit of a retool, it makes sense to clear some payroll, and the same goes for Nolan Arenado. The problem with Arenado is, what is the market going to look like? Sure, still a great defender, but the bat has really regressed over the last couple of years. The batted ball metrics don't look all that good. So what is the market really going to be like for him? And, what team would be a good fit? I mean, maybe the Angels, they had the worst defense at third base this past year, but with Anthony Rendon still on the payroll, do they want to absorb some of Arenado's contract? I'm not so sure about that. The Mariners, if Eugenio Suarez ends up going elsewhere, maybe that could be a good fit there, gives him a good veteran at third base moving forward, and he would help cut down on the strikeouts there, so I could see that being a possibility, but I don't know. I don't like the fit of the ballpark. It's a picture-friendly park with those batted ball metrics. I don't know about that. Now, maybe the Tigers, I mean, sure, hey, I do think they're going to go out there, make a phone call for Alex Bregman. If that doesn't work out, could they just go with one of the younger guys again? Possibly, but I think maybe there could be interest in a veteran like him, and he would give them good defense. I don't like the park, though. Now, as for Jarren Duran and Wilyer Abreu, I definitely think one of them could get moved, and honestly, I would not be surprised at all to see Cedar Rafaela's name pop up. I'll get to that in just a little bit. Now, with Duran, sure, up and down year this past year, but overall, he was a 4 wins above replacement player, both on Fangraphs and Baseball Reference, so there's still good value there. He brings you a lot of speed, he's going to get a lot of extra base hits, doubles, triples, and he's going to give you a little bit of pop as well, so there is value with Duran. The problem is since he has pretty solid projections moving forward, wins above replacement wise, and along with the fact that he's in his arbitration years, he's going to be cheaper with 3 years of control, so he's going to have a pretty high surplus trade value. Now with Wilyer, he is going to be cheaper than Duran, but he still has a pretty solid surplus trade value as well, has good power upside from the left side, Gold Glove defense out in right field. There is platoon risk there, so I do wonder what teams would think about that with him. And with Cedar Rafaela, he's got platinum glove level defense out there in center field. I do think he is the best defensive center fielder in all of Major League Baseball, and he did show some more things with the bat this past year. He came up in some clutch moments throughout the year, so I think with him having the team-friendly contract that he has with that defense and improvement in the bat this past year, I could definitely see teams having interest in him. Now for Duran or Wilyer, I think small to mid-market teams like the Reds, Royals, Pirates, Marlins, and the Mariners make a lot of sense because they're on the cheaper side, and they could use another outfielder on those teams. I think maybe even the Phillies could make some sense as well. Like I said, they need to improve the defense out in right field, so maybe Willie Abreu could be an option there. Maybe even the Texas Rangers. I think they could use an improvement over Adolis Garcia just overall, both offensively and defensively. And maybe even the Nationals, since Willier does have a good amount of control left, he could still fit into that window if they're retooling over there, and he has the Paul Taboni connection, so maybe he could do something there with Mackenzie Gore. So that's pretty much it for the article, but I'm surprised they didn't list some other trade candidates. I think Sandy Alcantara could get moved if the Marlins get an offer to their liking, but I could also see them just hanging on to him because the Marlins did show some good things in the second half this past year, and that rotation would look very good in 2026. I think Yandy Diaz or Brandon Lau on the Rays, since the Rays are always trying to get ahead on value. Now, like I said about the Phillies earlier, they are looking to shake things up. I talked about Alec Bohm. Maybe they could move him, maybe get Aiden Miller into the mix, maybe even someone like Brandon Marsh, who's pretty much just a platoon guy at this point. Maybe they would rather have a full-time outfielder like Kyle Tucker. I think Mitch Keller on the Pirates could be a possibility to help bring back a bat. Luis Robert, he's always on the trade block since the White Sox are rebuilding. There's a lot of guys that I think are going to be available out there. But that's it for this article here today. I thought there were some interesting things here. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. What do you think about these early rumors that we're getting here right off the bat? It's going to be a fun off season, ladies and gentlemen. But everybody, that's all I got for right now. If you can on the way out, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.